Hey nerds, welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing a special episode of Rouge, the series where I simultaneously put on my makeup and do a book review. And on this special episode we're going to be talking about How to Be Eaten by who? Maria Adelmann. Is it Adelmann? Adelmann? I always butcher names and I'm so sorry. This woman right here. But before we get into that, I just want to thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. Now let's get into this. Oh, something else before I start. Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy Yule, Happy Kwanzaa. All of that. Did I get everybody? I think so. All right. Happy solstice, that one too. I have been talking about doing a special Rouge episode on how to be eaten, and I said that like 3 months ago. Sorry, when the ideas come, I gotta let them out, I gotta let them flow. But we're finally here. And this is also gonna be the last Rouge of 2025. So yes, hopefully I can get it out in time, and if not, Happy New Year. But so before I give the synopsis, I'm gonna read the book jacket. I just wanna kind of describe the book in the best terms possible. So do y'all remember when I read the Final Girl Support Group last year? This one right here. If you haven't seen this video, please go watch it. The book is so good and I love my look in that one, so go watch it please, thank you. It's in the Rouge playlist on my channel. Yes honey, there's a playlist, I don't know if you noticed. This is just like that. However, instead of characters based off of horror movie Final Girls, we have characters based off of fairy tale women. That's camp, we love it. It's a support group for fairy tale women, or women that are based off of fairy tales. It's the same premise as the Final Girl Support Group, but you know, no horror movies this time. But I'm gonna go ahead and read the synopsis anyway. In present day New York City, 5 women meet in a basement support group to process their traumas. Bernice grapples with the fallout of dating a psychopathic blue-bearded billionaire. Ruby, once devoured by a wolf, now wears him as a coat. Gretel questions her memory of being held captive in a house made of candy. Ashley, the winner of a bachelor-esque dating show, wonders if she really got her promised fairy tale ending. And Raina's love story will shock them all. Though the women start out wary of one another, judging each other's stories, gradually they begin to realize that they may have more in common than they suppose. What really brought them here? What secrets will they reveal? And is it too late for them to rescue one another? So there's the premise, right? Very interesting. And I'm probably gonna say this a lot throughout this video as well, but this book really reminds me of a video game called The Wolf Among Us by Telltale. Any Burleezy fans watching, that is how I discovered that video game. Anyway, the video game, The Wolf Among Us, follows a similar premise. It's all these fairy tale characters who leave the fairy tale storybook world to live normal lives as humans amongst real humans, or what they call mundies. And it's also taking place in New York City, the book is, so there's some similarities there. Now I want to go through the characters. I already kind of talked about them a little bit when I read the book jacket, but I'm gonna go through them real quick so we can have an idea of who we are about to meet. So we have Bernice, and she, if you didn't pick it up from the book jacket, she is the woman from the tale of Bluebeard. She's 23, she's a plus-size girly. Representation matters. She's a little skittish, insecure, but overall she's a nice girl. Then we have Ruby, who is supposed to be our Little Red Riding Hood successor. She's very provocative, type B woman who is in need of therapy and a hug. Then we have Gretel. They didn't even bother changing her name. She is Gretel of Hansel and Gretel. She's one of the older women in the group, and you know, she's hard to read at first. Then we have Ashley. Now, when I first read this book, I was like, what fairy tale character is she supposed to be representing? I knew it was some kind of princess, and I think it was Cinderella, but she's like the stuck-up, spoiled, bitchy one, if that makes sense. There's always one of those in like a group of women characters. There's always some type of archetype that follows those descriptors. And then there's Raina. She's supposed to represent the main character, the young woman from Rumpelstiltskin. And she's the only other woman who's slightly older than the rest of the girls in the group. She's very composed and regal, but she's hiding something very dark. All right, let's jump into the plot. Instead of chapters, it goes by the week and whose turn it is to tell their story. So here we go. Week 1, the beginning. So the women are meeting up in the basement of a YMCA building for their first session of group. They were all copied on this anonymous email targeting public figures with traumatic pasts. All the women ignored it at first, but you know, with the follow-up of relentless response emails, they eventually caved. And we get some brief exposition on all the women in group. Bernice is relatively new to this world of being in the spotlight as a victim, and that's because her story, fairy tale, is still fresh in the headlines. She's the escaped ex-girlfriend of a tech billionaire named Bluebeard. This guy is literally a pretentious douchebag billionaire who dyed his beard blue for vanity. I don't know. Long story short, the public thinks that she is responsible for either conspiring with Bluebeard with all his weird shit, or that she is responsible for killing him. Then we get to Gretel. I like to argue she's the most famous in the bunch, despite her story happening years ago. Long story short, her and her brother were kidnapped and went missing for 3 months and then suddenly reappeared out of nowhere. Whole time a witch tried to eat them. So yes. Then there's Raina. People have mostly forgotten her story because they're so focused on who she's married to at the moment, the man that she's married to. He is a sparkly TV personality. He's one of those types. Then there's Ashley. I say hers is pretty fresh too. She's the recent winner of a Bachelor-esque TV show, like the book jacket said. And during her run on the show, she caused a bit of controversy. And she is very reality TV coded. And we don't get any exposition on Ruby yet because her ass is late to the first meeting. And then finally, we are introduced to Will. He is the therapist, psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever you want to call him. He's the person who is going to be leading group with all these women. Noticeably, he is the only man in attendance, and when I was first reading this, I was like, I don't know about this. Because at least, I don't want to compare it, and I'm not going to, but in the Final Girl support group, at least the therapist, Dr. Carol, at least she was a woman too. I don't know how I feel about a man, like opening up to a man in that way and then having him psychoanalyze me. And maybe it's just me, maybe I'm too woke, but my initial thought was, if we're going to be doing group therapy where women are sharing their trauma, why would a man be there? The trauma that they all have accumulated was because of a man or something of the male species. Anyway, Ruby finally shows up, and no tea, no shade, no pink lemonade. Ruby toe up. She looks very sloppy. She's got hair all over the place, and she's wearing this huge, funky, nasty ass fur coat. And this isn't just any coat. Remember in the book jacket? This coat was made from the wolf that tried to kill her when she was a little girl. We're gonna get into that later, but just know. So everyone sits down and, you know, Will introduces himself and he is reminding the women why they are there in the first place. It's for the research of narrative therapy and, you know, seeing how women can connect with one another when they've been through similar things. Sure, okay. So he goes over the three main He goes over the 3 main rules of group. No absences, no tardies, and most importantly, absolute honesty at all times. And from the get, Ashley and Ruby, they start beefing. So the focus falls on Bernice because she is going to be the first one to like share her story with the group. And Ashley makes a very, you know, harsh observation that Bernice had to be involved with Bluebeard's schemes. You know why? Do you know why? So he was known for dating lots of, you know, model-esque women, very beautiful women. Bernice does not look like that. Ashley claims that you're not his type, so you had to be helping him. That is very bold of you to say to me, to my face, and I just met you. And courtesy of Will's absolute honesty rule, Bernice tells her that, okay, yeah, that may be true, but that doesn't mean it hurts any less. That hurts my feelings, and you're not the only one who thinks that, but it still hurts to hear. And this chapter ends with Bernice getting ready to share her story with the group. We're still in week 1, but now it is Bernice's story. And this chapter opens with Bernice telling us a little bit about Bluebeard, Mainly his obsession with the color blue, specifically the shade cyan. Is it cyan or it's cyan, right? I don't even know, but this color. Bernice also tells us that she grew up in East Hampton and she's seen people come and go all her life, right? That is until she finds out Bluebeard bought the property across the street from her. Bernice lives with her mom and her older sister Naomi, and they're not happy about this news. Then Bernice tells us that Bluebeard's real name is Ashton Adams, and he starts to send gifts, more specifically desserts, over to their house, right? Bernice's mom and Naomi, they don't like the looks of this man, okay? They don't like his ever-growing mansion across the street either that is obstructing the city view. And he keeps sending gifts over to their house because, you know, he's trying to, I guess, be a good neighbor or something like that. And Bernice is starting to like it a little bit. And then here comes Naomi, being a big sister. She's like, hey, this dude has a long history of womanizing. Keep your distance. She says he, quote, chews through women like bubblegum. That's not exactly a glowing review. So Bluebeard ends up throwing a party at his mansion and he invites Naomi, not Bernice. Quick reminder, Naomi don't like that man. Bernice kind of is intrigued by him. So Naomi is like, I'm not going to that shit. I can't stand him. But Bernice begs her to go. She's like, please, when are we ever gonna get the opportunity to go to a mansion party? Let's go. So they end up going anyway. So they go to the party, right? And the party goers are a mix of rich Tumblr hipsters, IT nerds, and Wall Street assholes. So after Naomi needs to run to the potty, Bernice is left alone in the midst of the party. Then Ashton appears out of nowhere trying to push up on her. I'm gonna call him Ashton and Bluebeard interchangeably, but it's the same person. And I want to say this, I know I make this comparison kind of very often, but I don't care because it's true. Ashton is very Christian Grey coded. You know, billionaire who came from nothing and has a sickening air of grandiose under their ass, thinking they can buy anything and anyone they want. And what is so off-putting about Bluebeard is that he tries to be deep. And he's not. He's as deep as a kiddie pool. He was preaching to Bernice about how technology suffocates too much of human interaction. Mind you, you are the CEO and founder of a tech company. I kind of don't want to hear that shit. And then the story behind why his beard is blue and why most of his possessions are blue is so stupid. Apparently, it was supposed to be a play on the term blue bloods and how he himself has made himself one instead of being born into it. You're still pretentious. You're not doing yourself any favor. Bluebeard and Bernice sneak away and they go to his study and he's showing her all this cool looking furniture, right? And decorations. More specifically, there are 4 jars. These are canopic jars. Am I saying it right? Canopic jars from ancient Egypt. Now, if you don't know what a canopic jar is, basically after they got done mummifying a deceased person, they would put their organs into these jars to hold. Anyway, he has 4 of these jars. There's 1 with the human face and 3 with the faces of animals. And he calls them Tiffany jars. Now, we don't know why, but we'll find out later why he calls them Tiffany jars. Anyway, I want to really zero in on this. Bluebeard is very, all caps, very obsessed with all of his furniture and decorations, okay? Like, he's Arnie and Christine obsessed. If you know, you know. And Bernice, being curious and freaked out at the same time, she's like, hey, are those jars, like, empty? Bluebeard says no. What do you mean no? And somehow that doesn't worry her at all, and they end up kissing. So we cut back to group during this time, and Will asks Bernice if she didn't see the red flag. Ashley comes to her defense talking about, you know, when you're in love, you really don't notice anything else. Ruby does not. Yeah, Ashley's stance is you're not noticing the flaws when you're in love, and Ruby's rebuttal to that is the pretentious personality wasn't red enough for you. And Ruby's like, girl, be real, he played you. All right, back to the story, and Bernice tells us about Bluebeard's weird way of courting a lady. I guess it's not weird, but it's weird that he's doing it. This pretentious asshole doesn't believe in texting, so he communicates through handwritten notes and expensive gifts. And then after sending her handwritten notes and expensive gifts, he would ghost her for days on end. I don't even know if I let it get this far. His behavior at the party was enough to turn me off. Cause it's like, how do you ghost me after showering me with gifts? Get the on. But he eventually ends up winning Bernice over, you know, with expensive dinners and these little gifts. And I'm sitting here reading this, you know, first time reading this, and I'm like, baby, you sat here, let this man buy your love. You are in deep shit. And y'all remember how I said Bluebeard is very obsessed with his furniture? He is so obsessed that the first time that him and Bernice, you know, did it, they was knocking boots. She was bent over like some kind of, you know, dresser that had inlaid bone in it. And he's very fond of that dresser. And Bernice even admitted that she noticed that some things with him were off, but she chose to ignore it. For example, Bernice says, I don't want to go to my stupid job. I just want to stay here with you. And then Bluebeard responds, I could keep you here. You'd have no choice. You'd have to stay here forever. And she still stuck around. And it wasn't for the money. Like, Bernice is not like that. She could care less, right? It's because he gave you some attention and some ding-a-ling. You know what? We jump back to the present, and Bernice is starting to feel uneasy as she is recounting the events of her relationship with Bluebeard. And the women try to make her feel better, and they're like, okay, you know, your story's not uncommon. You know, what girl hasn't fallen in love with a rich asshole at least one point in their life? Like, it happens. And Bernice says, that's not the point. I know I'm not special, and I know I'm not the first girl to experience this, but it still shakes me up what happened. And we're only a few pages into the book, mind you, and I'm already getting super defensive over Bernice because let this girl tell her story. Like, she's shaking up even telling this story, and you hoes are being insensitive. This is supposed to be a safe space, damn it. Back to the story. Naomi is telling, what's her name? Bernice. Naomi is telling Bernice that she really does not approve of her relationship with Bluebeard. Naomi spoke that bullshit a mile away, and Bernice only saw it as her big sister stepping on her good time, talking about some, why can't you let me have this? Girl, she's trying to help your ass. Like, she's trying to help you. Being that Bernice spends so much time at Bluebeard's house, especially alone, he gives her this skeleton key that opens any door in the house. And he says you can explore, go anywhere, look for anything, except there's a room behind the wine cellar. That is the one place you cannot go. That's the only catch with him giving her the skeleton key. And this is where the original story comes into play. Spoiler alert, I'm letting you know now. Alright. The original fairy tale of Bluebeard is about a wealthy rich man who murders all his wives, and he marries someone new, and she discovers the forbidden room with all the evidence of those past marriages. Bluebeard finds out that his new wife found out, and he tries to kill her. But then she ends up turning on him, killing him, and escaping. I only told the original fairy tale because me, myself, I had never heard of the fairy tale of Bluebeard ever in my life, and I had to look it up. I was like, I've never heard this story before. But that's how the original story goes. So Bluebeard leaves, and now Bernice is all alone in this mansion with this skeleton key. And she's thinking that he's got some kind of messed up BDSM fetish kink room hidden behind the wine cellar, right? And she's like, okay, that's not the strangest thing in the world, but you know, whatever. And then she's also thinking, what kind of freak nasty shit is he into if he has to hide the room behind a wall? So Bernice does the one thing that she wasn't supposed to do. She go in that room. She goes in the room, and what does she find in this room, you may ask? She finds the last girl that Bluebeard dated dangling on a hook like a fresh piece of meat in a butcher shop. And now it's all coming to Bernice. That dresser I talked about that had the inlaid bone, that was human bone. Those the canopic jars that he said that actually had stuff in it, organs of his past girlfriends. Yes. He's been collecting women and making furniture out of them. And my initial thought was, is this bitch trying to be Leatherface or what? Like, what is happening? So like any normal person would, Bernice starts doing what? Freaking the out. Because she realizes that she is next. And y'all wanna know what the scariest part about this whole like event right here is? Bluebeard's mansion is also a smart house. And he has this AI assistant named Andrea that controls everything in the house, like the heating system, the blinds and shit. the doors, all that stuff, right? So it talks back to Bluebeard and any other guests who frequent the house. It's kind of like Jarvis from Iron Man, but evil. And you know what? I'm just gonna read it to y'all. I gotta read it to y'all because me explaining it, I can't do it justice. So here we go. But you be so hard to touch. Just as I arrived at the mansion's front entrance, a chorus of sharp clicking noises echoed through the mansion, the simulated sound of every single door locking. I pulled and twisted at the handle anyway, desperately and to no avail. Red blood streaked the shiny handle, and I realized I had been gripping the skeleton key so tight that I had punctured the skin of my palm. Going somewhere? Andrea asked from the ether. My hand trembled on the bloody knob. I was shaking so much that my teeth were clicking together, a response to terror I had known was real. Let me out, I squeaked. I can't do that, Taylor, said Andrea. I'm not Taylor, I said. That was the last girlfriend, she replied. Did you meet her? In the basement? I'm Bernice, I cried with more conviction than I'd ever said my name. No need to yell, said Andrea. What kind of woman are you? I shouted. I exist beyond your human concept of gender, said Andrea. You, I said. There's no need for that language, said Andrea. This reminds me of that one part in Ready or Not when what's her name? The main character, she was like, start the fucking car, and he was like, there's no need to curse. Even before I tried everything, my cell phone, my computer, the doors, the windows, the passcodes from the blue book, shouting at the top of my lungs, beating the window with the blue flamingo statue, even before all that, I knew I was trapped. I lay down on the beaded couch, my heart hurling itself against my chest like a caged animal. Andrea, I whispered. Yes. Can you open the doors? No, she said. Is there some password I can say so you'll open the doors? No, she said. The windows? I asked. No, she said. Do you get asked these questions often? I asked. Yes, she said. The 19-foot TV flipped on, and the blue-bearded face of my boyfriend filled the room. A half smile drew across his face, just one side like a person having a stroke. On the TV, his smirk was twice as long as my entire body. He looked like he could swallow me whole, but this was wishful thinking. Ashton clearly liked to torture his prey. Find anything interesting? He asked. His words boomed around me, surround sound. No, I said, but my voice shook. I asked you not to go in there, he said. Suddenly, I saw Ashton as my sister saw him, not as a hero or a self-possessed business mogul, but as an awkward and ugly asshole. His beard was designed to both counter and conceal his soft, stupid face. His pretentious tone was an attempt to elevate a bitter history of geeky uncoolness. I thought all of the awkward grudge-holding school shooters, the Volcel Nazis, the pudgy and petulant dictators, the pale men on power trips who were always either my bosses or my boyfriends. It's strange to learn your boyfriend is a psychopath and to not be entirely surprised. Obviously, I've been watching you this entire time, he said. Obviously, I squeaked. Obviously, I'm at the front door. He walked in holding the phone in front of him, so there were two smug blue-bearded faces in the room with me. 3 if you counted the one he was staring at on his own phone. By the time I realized I should lunge at the door, it was already clicking closed behind him. He must have seen my body's slight jerk toward freedom. Sorry, he said. No use trying. Just you and me for the next 5 hours. 5 hours? I thought I was going to throw up, but instead I started hiccuping uncontrollably, which made everything I said sound ridiculous. Don't do this, I said. Tell me, said Ashton, as cool as a cucumber. Why don't you deserve this? I considered the closeness of sharp and heavy objects. I considered the oldest trick in the book, seduction. He put down his phone as I walked toward him so the TV showed only the bright white of the ceiling, washed out and featureless like the soft light of nothing you're supposed to see before death. I tried to sound sexy. I'll do anything you want. He leaned down toward me as if he was going to kiss me, then whispered in my ear, I stepped backward, hiccuped again. Don't, I said. Why not? Tell me why you don't deserve it. Because I didn't do anything wrong, I said, my voice trembling. You murdered. He laughed. So you're an innocent victim? Sunlight poured through the narrow window next to the door, illuminating him from the back in a long rectangle of light that looked like careful production work. His blue leather shoes sharp and shining, his smartwatch gleaming. Don't tell me you like me for my personality, that you weren't using me. Where was all the female attention when I was a fat kid at computer camp, he sighed. I told you my philosophy the very first time we met. Were you listening at all? He gestured to my blue amber necklace, my blue laptop closed on the table. Have you earned any of this? Why do you deserve the spoils of my labor? Why do you think you're entitled to all the keys to my kingdom when you haven't done any of the work? I felt hot tears on my cheeks. It struck me that I had believed on some level that being in a relationship with Ashton would be work enough. You gave me these things, I said. You gave me the keys. You're just like everyone else, said Ashton. You say yes to my face, then turn around and do whatever you want. Do the very thing, in fact, the exact thing I asked you not to do. You don't respect me. Yes, I do, I said, my voice shaking. He smirked. What's my job, Bernice? You're an entrepreneur, I said. You don't even know what I do, and you think you deserve the money I make? You still dated from the masses, I said. Oh, so it's worse than I thought. You want my money, but you don't want to be complicit in my crimes? You're as bad as a Nazi wife feigning innocence while flaunting her gold jewelry, pilfer from the dead, reading by the warm glow of a skin lampshade as the scent of burnt flesh drifts in through the window. At least I don't pretend to be good. Men don't have to pretend to be good, I thought. In fact, they're supposed to be a little brutal. He began a speech I was sure he recited many times before to the many girlfriends he'd murdered. The speech was about, among other things, aristocracy, meritocracy, mediocrity, technology, morality, disruption, and his associations with the color blue. My beard isn't just blue, it's cyan. Cyan is the C in CMYK, the 4-color printing system that transforms the digital back into the physical. The word cyan derives from cyanide. Test a solution for cyanide with iron sulfate and you get Prussian blue, the first modern color. You know it? He asked rhetorically, though I did know it. It was a deep navy, you might say, but richer, a royal blue, as seen through darkness. Prussic acid is Zyklon B. The Nazis used it in the gas chambers. The B stands for blue acid. Bless you. I don't know how to pronounce that. It's okay. He said the last word with his best German accent. He was working through some core of internal logic, but trying to follow it like it was trying to make sense of spam. I zoned in and out. I saw through the window a man advancing toward the house. He was wearing all brown and had a big brown box in his hand. UPS, my model ship. The delivery man paused a few feet before the narrow window and the sunlit square disappeared from the door, but Ashton kept talking. I tried to catch the delivery man's eye. I wanted him to read the terror in my face. In my kingdom, Ashton was saying, crimes like yours, I'm sorry to say, are punishable by death. If you want to enjoy my wealth while not doing anything, you might as well be an inanimate object. The delivery man didn't read the terror in my face at all. He just smiled and gestured that he would bring in the package. He turned the knob and the door, it just opened. Same day delivery. Do ex machina. Ashton turned toward the noise and I kicked him in the groin. For the briefest moment I caught the expression of his face. Not anger or horror, but shock. Shock that I, of all people, might do him in. He caught my foot in his hand as he doubled over. I jerked my leg, kicking it free, sprinted out the door as he moaned behind me. By the time the police arrived, blue lights flashing over blue house, a final flourish, Ashton was dead. Poison. Cyanide. Go figure. So within those 4 pages, what did we learn, kids? We learned that not only Bluebeard was a pretentious asshole with lots of money, he was an incel. So back to the present, and Bernice shares that she has very heavy survivor's guilt due to the other girls that came before her and weren't so lucky. And then Will has Bernice do a role play activity to give the victims a voice and properly try to communicate her feelings. And it's during this exercise that Bernice reveals she can hear the dead ex-girlfriends talking to her. She took some of the furniture from Bluebeard's house and she has them. Her survivor's guilt on top of her trauma has her hearing the voices of these dead women. One of them named Tiffany, and all of her organs are in those 4 canopic jars or the Tiffany jars. And I'm not saying it isn't possible, but maybe she was driven a wee bit crazy. And this chapter ends with Bernice recounting all of the things the furniture women have told her. How angry they are, how they died, how they lived. And even after they told Bernice all of that, they still don't like her. And I think that's because they're jealous that she's the only one who survived Bluebeard. Bernice has no one that she can talk to about what she went through accept the furniture because they are the only ones who understand what she went through. But even then, they don't want to hear it because they label it as self-pity. So instead, Bernice does the next best thing besides, you know, getting some justice for them. She lets them tell their stories to her. All right, next chapter, week 2. It's Ruby's turn. This chapter opens with Ruby coming to after fainting. Lovely. And the paramedics come to take care of her, but she ends up shooing them away and giving them a hard time. And do y'all remember that big ass funky coat she's wearing? She refuses to take it off. She will not part with it no matter what. And it seems to be drenched in blood at the moment, so that just makes everything 10 times worse. And all the women in group are like, what the f is wrong with this girl? But mainly they're concerned. Ruby just passed out in the middle of the floor and she's acting like this is normal. And Will finally addresses the elephant in the room and he's like, I get the feeling this coat is very important to you because you won't take it off. And Ruby's like, yeah, you know, I guess you could say that. And she finally tells group what happened to her earlier that day leading up to now. So Ruby gets to talking and it turns out she works at a coffee shop and none of the employees like her at all. Well, I wouldn't say none. There's this one barista there, his name is Emil. She just, you know, they hang out. She occasionally sucks him off in the storage closet from time to time, no biggie. Ruby makes it a point to tell us that it's not even romantic, it's just something to do to pass the time. Which, why would you do that? Why would you for fun, you know? And she also likes the power play that happens when they, you know, get together, I guess. Emil is ashamed to be seen with her, and they're not even dating. They're not even like exclusive. They just messing around. But he still wants that cookie. Then Ruby clues us in on what happened to her when she was a kid, just a little bit though. She doesn't go into the full story yet. She gives us some small details about her incident with the big bad wolf. That is not the same as that. I don't know what that is. I just want to make this clear before I move any further. Ruby was 12 years of age when she was attacked by this wolf. Because that's gonna be important later, so just keep that in mind. She was 12 years old. In the darkest time of year, why is it so bright down here? Brighter than a carnival. Natural. Ruby tells us what people like her are bound to go through. The interviews, the promos, the brand deals, the where are they now specials, stuff like that. And ever since her incident, she has been a spectacle. I don't mean to be rude, but Ruby is a very sloppy individual. She shows up to work late, she's a heavy drinker, she doesn't follow the rules, she can't follow basic hygiene, and her boss even tells her this, but in like the nicest way you possibly can. And apparently Ruby's boss is tired of repeating herself because she fires her that morning. So back to the present in group, and this is where we come to the conclusion that Ruby is a masochist for self-destruction. This is why Ruby is the way that she is. She thinks the whole world is against her, so she doesn't even try. Can you see me? I hope you can see me, cause baby. Back to Ruby's story. So Booty Call Emil is what I like to call him. Booty Call Camille, being the scumbag that he is, he asks Ruby, why do you let me treat you like a $2 hooker? I mean, he doesn't say that, but that's how I paraphrase it. And he's like, I'm tired of treating you like shit. It makes me feel bad. And that's supposed to be her fault? What do I always say, y'all? Men ruin everything. Because be so for real, how do you flip something like that on her? No. It's your fault that I treat you like shit, bro. Get the out of here. Back on Ruby, her trauma haunts her wherever she may go. In public, a random stranger comes up to her and tells her that she believes her version of the story. Apparently there's more than one version of what happened to Ruby out there, and we'll get to that later. But for every supporter, there's 10 haters. Other onlookers start talking shit about her coat and how she acts this way for attention. I agree with the latter, but let's remember that this girl went through something very horrendous. And here's the thing, Ruby knows that the coat is in bad shape and she knows it's disgusting. The reason why she won't take it off is because it's a constant reminder of what she went through. And of course she hasn't admitted that yet to the other women. She hasn't even admitted it to herself. Bernice even calls Ruby out on this very thing and she's like, you love to be the most traumatized person in the room. You do it for attention. And that's the reason that she doesn't take anything seriously. Back to Ruby's story, she's headed to the cleaners to go, you know, fix her coat when she gets a match on Tinder and the guy wants to meet up. So Ruby goes home with the stranger, or the stranger finds self-harm scars all over her arm, and of course she gets defensive over it, like that's none of your business, don't worry about it. Ruby asks the stranger, do you know who Little Red is? And he feeds her a negative tabloid version of the Little Red story. It hurts Ruby, but she doesn't say anything. And then they do their business, you know. So we're back in group and Will asks the entire group, you know, what that story has to do with Ruby's past. And like the stranger, Ashley spews the version the tabloids created that Ruby seduced the wolf and that it was her fault that she was attacked. Will knew what he was doing. He was instigating like a motherfucker. Thankfully, Raina doesn't feed into that narrative because like a decent human being, she doesn't believe a child is capable of seducing anyone. Ruby gets defensive again and tries to deflect when Raina and Gretel are trying to help her. Then Ruby gets to going off on Gretel, who has been very quiet so far. And she decides to point out that Gretel is anorexic, which, whoa. And this came after, you know, Gretel asked Ruby, can you even take care of yourself? I'm gonna be totally transparent right now. I wanted to punch Ruby in her goddamn mouth. Clearly she has unresolved trauma and all this pent up anger and she's allowed to be angry, but calling someone's ED out to get the attention off of you, that's low. And to rub salt in the wound, we find out why Gretel is anorexic. It's because her teeth were so damaged by all that sugar consumption as a child that it hurts her to eat. So Bernice, she gets on that ass again. And she's like, okay, that's all fine and dandy, you telling us about your day, but you still haven't told us about the incident with the wolf. Like, that's why you're here. And we finally get to hear the moment that Ruby met the wolf. It still follows like the same premise of the original fairy tale. Her mom sends her to go take something to her grandma by her lonesome. Remember, she is 12. And due to bad eyesight in the darkness, she thought that the wolf, when she ran into him, was a tall man. And that's what I'm thinking. Maybe like the wolf, he's like a man that has wolf in his name, or like he has features that are wolf-like. No, it's a real, like, actual wolf with like 4 legs and fur and everything. It's not like an allegory for a wolf or a metaphor for a wolf. It's an actual wolf. And also, the wolf can talk. So I'm just like, okay, what reality is this based in? Because, sure, okay. And Ruby pointed this out. She was like, why do you know how to talk? But he don't care nothing about that because now he started to circle Ruby, right? And upon reading this for the first time, I realized very quickly that the wolf is a metaphor, double metaphor, if you will. One, it's in the literal sense, you know, of him being a predator, and 2, being that he cornered a 12-year-old girl by herself and began to flirt with her. So yeah, there's the double metaphor. And Ruby did tell us that the wolf tried to kill and eat her, and I feel like that was a double metaphor too. She was literally eaten, but I feel like that served as an implied way of saying that she was also SA'd by the wolf. And it turns out the man who saved Ruby from the wolf, he was the one who made the coat for her. So we flash back to group and it is evident that Ruby blames herself for everything that has happened to her. And that's so unfair, like, ugh. None of this is her fault, by the way, and she admits that she actually liked being tempted by the wolf. That still doesn't make it her fault. Raina, being the amazing woman that she is, tells Ruby that she was manipulated and lured by a predator. The women back Raina up because that is literally the truth. And Ruby finally admits that she wears the coat all the time because she'd be nobody without it. Like, damn, isn't that just the saddest thing you have ever heard? All right, next chapter, week 2, and this is titled The Office. So in this chapter, we get to learn a little more about Will. He's described to have flawless features, especially his skin, which was weird. As the chapter goes on, the description of Will's body becomes, I don't want to say strange, but it becomes a little, you know, I don't know. Like, it just becomes a little more, especially when it gets to his genitals. Now, the book refers to his, between me down there as sexless as a Ken doll. Now, at first, I'm thinking, cool, trans man, he's transitioning right now, ain't nothing wrong with that. But boy, was I wrong. I recorded my reaction while reading this for the first time, and I'll let that clip speak for itself. Roll the footage. Still reading, right? So the therapist, psychologist, whoever who is leading this group with all these women who had traumatic experiences, we just got a little glimpse into his life, because we've been focusing on the women, right? I just read a very detailed description of this man coming out of his own skin, like using a zipper essentially and taking off his skin. And I'm like, what the fuck am I reading? Turns out this man is also like representing a fairy tale. Now, I already knew that fairy tales were really fucked up. Like, I had knowledge of the ones that I know, you know, like the real Cinderella, the real Sleeping Beauty, the real Little Mermaid. I know that those are fucked up. So I didn't register that the other ones that I didn't know would be fucked up too. But I had to look up when it said the 2 words donkey skin, I knew immediately what fairy tale he was supposed to be, you know, he was supposed to be embodying, which is the donkey skin girl. Now, I have never read that story. I only know about that story a little bit because of a game called Wolf Among Us. I need to get into a rant session so I can explain fully why this book is like making me feel the way I feel. Okay. But it's the description of how this man came out of his skin suit. I'll tell you this. You know how zippers like start at the top of the back and they go down? This zipper starts from his asshole and goes up his back. And he peels it off like that. He peels it off the front off like a hospital gown. But the zipper is in his ass. And when they were describing like the body and like how smooth and fake it was, and then like the sexless mound between his legs, I'm like, okay, transgender man, okay, fine, whatever. But then he started to unzip his skin suit from the inside of his asshole. I'm just like, oh, that's what that is. Got it. Got it. So yeah, Will is supposed to be the donkey skin girl, and he's not flawlessly beautiful at all. Turns out he's quite ugly. He's older, and it even sounds like he's got like severe eczema or something. Because there's a part in there about itchy skin and quelling said itchiness with lotion. Will is a real life catfish. This is catfish in the worst way. Like, oh my God, can you imagine? All right, week 3. And it's Ashley's turn now. So before we get into her chapter, do y'all remember when I said I wasn't sure which fairy tale character she was supposed to represent? Turns out I was kind of sort of right. She's supposed to be Cinderella. I had to look it up because I was like, okay, it's killing me. Even then when I was reading it back all the way in September, I was like, who is she supposed to be? And her name was a dead giveaway. Ashley. Ash. Like cinder in the bottom of a fireplace. Yes. I figured she was some kind of princess because of her perfect, prissy personality and appearance. And from the first few paragraphs of this chapter, we learn that Ashley is an observer, and she even notices that Will has a little crush on Raina. Anyway, at the start of this session of group, Will has the women do musical chairs, hold the music. The silence is supposed to teach them to listen to each other or something like that. While doing this exercise, Ashley and Ruby get into it again. If you haven't caught on, they don't like each other, honey. So Ashley wins the game, and she boasts to the group how she's the only one who got a happy ending, and that the guy that she ended up with or she got involved with wasn't a complete loser. She was lying like shit, but we're gonna get to that. So Ashley begins to tell her story, and she decides to start with the wedding. It was a perfect fairy tale wedding, no pun intended. And she's immediately interrupted by Ruby, who calls her out for telling this version, which she knows isn't the real one. And the version Ruby is talking about comes from the dating show Ashley was on called The One. It's this universe's The Bachelor, okay? And the book cover even alluded it to being Bachelor-esque. And Ashley was the winner of her season. That is super dark. What did I do? How did I that up already? Ashley was a regular girl from Pennsylvania working her 9 to 5, right? And she tells us that the show does this thing with roses, just like The Bachelor, but there's different color roses. So red means that, girl, he is in love with you, he's digging you, he wants you outside himself. Pink means he's in like with you. Yellow is like the punishment rose, the warning rose, or like the friend zone rose. And then if he gives you a white rose, you're eliminated. You ain't coming back. I never watched The Bachelor, so I don't know if they do different color roses too. So, but Ashley got word of the casting call and decided to audition for the show. Now, Ashley admits while she did go on the show to find love, she perked up at the opportunity of being on television. And like most reality shows, phones and clocks are not allowed. That reminds me a lot of Love Island. That is the only dating show that I have watched in recent years, so that's like the first thing I compared it to. Anyway, the producer, or one of the main like assistant producers, Hannah, kind of acts as Ashley's fairy godmother. She's guiding Ashley through the process and giving her tidbits on how to win the guy's heart. The guy's name is Brandon. Back to group, and all of the women are chiming in about how abusive the show protocol was, which, yes, it was. They kept the contestants in their hotel rooms for 3 days, took their phones and watches, blindfolded them, and took them to a secret location in the middle of Italy. And Ashley brushes it off like, you know, most women in her situation do, and was like, you know, I signed the contract agreeing to that stuff, so it's okay. No, honey, it's not. And Raina even says, just because you agree to something, it doesn't mean that you weren't taken advantage of. Truer words have never been spoken. Back to the story. So Ashley is the first girl to be chosen to meet Brandon. And when they meet, Ashley claims it was love at first sight, but that is quickly shattered when production makes them do the intro again, and it takes all of the magic and authenticity out of it. Things go well, and Ashley gets a red rose. And I do want to note that Ashley truly does like this guy. Ashley's already got a few enemies in the house, but ultimately, she's doing pretty good holding Brandon's attention. So Ashley and the rest of the contestants try not to drive each other up a wall, because literally they are not allowed to have any type of entertainment or connection to the outside world. They also have no way of keeping track of time, and there are multiple restricted areas that they are not allowed to go in. And there's one contestant in particular that Ashley doesn't like. Her name is also Ashley, but it's spelled with a Y. So the show calls her Ashley Y, and they call our Ashley Ashley E, because her name is spelled E-E, not E-Y. Anyway, Ashley Y is this condescending Christian girl next door type, and she's been getting a lot of attention from Brandon lately. Her and Ashley have been bumping heads ever since the first episode. Being that she is so bored and that she is trying to find a way to keep time, Ashley, our Ashley, creates a sundial out of a paper. How creative is she? And with each passing day, she's telling us that she's getting closer and closer to Brandon and falling deeply into love with him. So back to group. The whole group thinks that the editors and producers were very manipulative, and they question if Ashley truly loves Brandon. And then Bernice addresses the incident that made her famous in the first place. A really bad fight took place on the show and Ashley was involved. Back to the story, Ashley's sundial turns up missing. And she's asking around, you know, to see if anyone found it or whatever. Turns out Ashley Y, the girl that she doesn't like, has been using it as a drink cover. And that was the last straw for our Ashley. Ashley Y slips up and says Hannah told her to take it. And I say slip up because when she says, well, Hannah said that I should, and she stops talking like she wasn't supposed to say that. That's why I say she slipped up. So our Ashley starts giving this bitch some go because she was about to pour a daiquiri over Ashley Y's head, but then the glass slipped out of her hand. And after they fall off of this chair they were tussling on, Ashley Y wound up with the stem of the daiquiri glass going straight through the palm of her hand. Of course, Brandon caught wind of this and he gave Ashley E a yellow rose. And Hannah tries to calm her down, and Ashley is trying to see if she really did tell Ashley Y to take her damn sundial. So the host of the show, a guy named Jake Jackson, has a private meeting with Ashley. In exchange for telling Ashley at the time, he asked her what was she willing to do for love, and Ashley said anything, including fight. So Jake Jackson asks Ashley, was the glass incident, you know, an accident, and how does she really feel about Ashley Y? And Ashley just lets loose right then and there. And we flash back to group, and once again the group is trying to tell Ashley that she was in a very toxic environment on that show. This upsets Ashley and she gets the going on all of it. I get it, like, you know, you don't want to seem like stupid, or you know, you don't want to seem like you were the one in the wrong when it's people hearing your story outside looking in. But don't deflect. Now we're trying to help you. It's a group therapy. Gotta hold each other accountable. Back to the story. Ashley ends up winning the whole show. And turns out Brandon is not the perfect bachelor that we saw on our TV screens. No. No, God, no. He's a greasy gamer slob who is high-key an asshole. And when she's coming to terms with, you know, meeting the real Brandon, this is when she finds out that she's been giving the villain edit on the show. And I guess that ruined Brandon's career, so now he resents her. And the entirety of the internet is letting Ashley have it. Poor girl. And it's at this moment Ashley never truly realized what she signed up for, and that she wasn't gonna get her happily ever after. And that's where that chapter ends. Next chapter, week 3 still, we're back at the office, we're back on Will. And here's a twist, here comes a twist, another twist. Twist number 2. Not only has he been wearing a goddamn skin suit this whole time, he's been recording all of the group sessions secretly. And he's planning on using this footage to create a new show for the world to see. He wanted to be a celebrity rehab meets Oprah hybrid. And I'm just like, ugh. Like, I was so skeeved out at this part, I'm not even gonna lie. He was the one who sent out the emails. I think I said that. And lo and behold, he reached out to other fairy tale women too. He got a response from Goldilocks, Princess and the Pea, and Snow White, I think. And there's this one other woman, I couldn't figure out who she was supposed to be. But other people responded, but he ended up going with the group that he has now because they were the ones who intrigued him the most. Now, not only is Will exploiting these women, he's exploiting them to advance his own career. Just like a man. Just evil. Alright, week 4, and now it's Gretel's turn. I'm being completely honest, I think Gretel's part was very boring and forgettable. So we learned that Gretel is an observer too, but it's only out of pure trauma and caution that she's an observer. Like, she's the type of woman to like sit closest to the door, to the nearest exit. So if something were to go down, she can get the out of there, which I get. And strangely enough, the first part of Gretel's chapter spends a lot of time on Bernice and this footstool that she brought with her this week to group. This stool was made from one of Bluebeard's victims, but this was the only piece of furniture that has not spoken to her yet. Eventually, Gretel gets around to telling her story. So she starts by telling us a little bit about herself. She has a job as a conservationist at the Met. Go ahead, Gretel, real fancy. She still talks to her brother Hansel, but they never talk about the incident. They haven't talked about it since it happened. And Gretel describes what it was like to attend Hansel's wedding, which was an abundance of desserts that night, which I imagine could be very triggering for someone like her. And it's heavily implied that Gretel distanced herself from her brother because he was the only one of the two who actually moved on. And we'll get around to why that is. Gretel also tells us about the time that she met a woman named Jade. She never made the effort to make friends or to date because she feared that she was going to be recognized from her smash news story all the way back in the day when they returned from being kidnapped. And that was the intrigue of Jade. That's why she was drawn to her, because she didn't know who she was. And she also makes it a point to say that Jade was 6 years her junior. And I don't know when this was, but Gretel is described to be in like her early 40s. So like Jade at the least is like 36 or something or whatever. But anyway, flashback to group, and Ashley was like, well, I'm way younger than Jade and I knew all about your story. Somehow another argument starts, this time between Ruby and Bernice. It's usually Ruby and Ashley. Ruby is the problem here. Ruby is always instigating, so they get to arguing and Ruby says, you know what, how about this? You get rid of that stool and all the other talking furniture, I'll get rid of my coat. I just realized that there's like a patch missing. Sorry, I gotta fix it. All right, we're back to Gretel telling her story, and when her incident happened, there was a photo that was circulating throughout the news. It was Hansel and Gretel reuniting with their father in the hospital, and in this photo, Gretel was wearing a green dress. I think it was given to her by like donors or like the hospital itself. I don't remember, but it was provided to the children. Did I just it up? How did I do that? I just up my eye, I'm pretty sure. And surprise, surprise, Gretel pulled a Ruby before Ruby even existed. She wore that dress everywhere for as long as she could. But the similarity ended there. Gretel only wore the dress because it reminded her of who she wasn't. I'm sorry, I gotta fix this because like that is so much brighter over here than it was over there. Ugh. But anyway, Gretel was poor and she came from a low income neighborhood, all right? It was here that we learned Hansel and Gretel's story. They don't match up. Like what happened to them during those 3 months when they were kidnapped, the stories don't match up. So their credibility declined because of that, and the public ended up turning on them. Then Gretel tells us about this reoccurring nightmare that she's had about the witch and the candy. And she's still trying to get used to being in a relationship, especially with someone like Jade, who is so open and is okay with sharing everything. I'm done touching it, I can't. I have to be okay with the fact that I messed up my eyes, and I'm gonna leave it at that. So it jumps back to group, and I want to read this part because I just have to. Why didn't you tell her anything? Asked Ashley in a near whine, wringing her hands. On the one, you really get a leg up with a traumatic story. Gretel stares out the window. Her eyes feel heavy, hard, excessively round. The brick wall is bright red in the late afternoon light. Some bricks are darker than others, and each week she finds herself searching for a pattern, as if what is obviously random might have some secret structure. Tragedy isn't capital, says Gretel. It doesn't buy you anything. It doesn't automatically make you a better person. And it certainly doesn't make people fall in love with you. Buys you time, says Ashley. On the show, you get to stay longer, shows your strength of character. Trauma in and of itself bestows nothing. It gives you power, says Ruby. People are fascinated by us. You're mistaking pity for interest, says Gretel. I'm not mistaking anything for anything, snaps Ruby. People are drawn to us. Like a horror movie, says Bernice. The stool is now sitting in her lap. Like a car accident, the thrill is that they aren't us. We're specimens, says Gretel. Zoo animals. Okay, whatever, says Ruby. Stay with this, Ruby, says Will. Are you a magic 8-ball, Will, says Ruby. Are there only 8 different things you can say? You're angry, says Will. To be honest, I thought Gretel of all people would get it, says Ruby. We both escaped being eaten for lunch just to have media eat us for dinner. She pauses to pick at skin on her lip. We're a rare breed, you know, child stars of tragedy. I'm not a star, says Gretel stiffly. So humble, mutters Ruby. I don't want to be known for being a victim, says Gretel. When did what we want matter, says Ruby. You're fighting reality. I'm leaning in. She tears off a piece of skin, flicks it to the floor, sucks the blood off her lip. You're stewing in it, says Gretel. I'm not stewing, says Ruby. You're literally sweating in a coat made from the skin of your abuser. At least I'm actually living my life, says Ruby. You cultivate misery, says Gretel. Oh, and you don't? My life isn't defined by what happened to me. Are you kidding? That's like saying a shadow isn't defined by the sun. Bernice puts her fingers in her ears, starts quietly humming. Guys, you're making Bernice go crazy, says Ashley. She gets enough of women arguing at home. Bernice is making herself go crazy, snaps Ruby. Raina, concerned, looks to Will, but he's too enthralled with the scene to notice. I bet he is, nasty ass snake. Gretel throws a hand in Bernice's direction. Is this better? This public drama? You don't think your smallness, your quietness takes up space, says Ruby. Ruby turns to Bernice, who is still humming. But also, stop it! You're freaking me out. Ashley taps Bernice on the shoulder. Bernice stops humming, opens her eyes with a dazed look. Ashley pats her hands in the air as if asking a museum visitor to bring down the noise level. Then she turns to the group, narrowing her eyes. Calm down, she hisses, putting her fingers to her lips, her bright pink nails so long it's almost in her nostril. Thank you, Ashley, says Will. He thinks for a moment. Gretel and Ruby, maybe there's a way to explore this tension. He pats his thighs, stands up. Let's pull 2 chairs. No, says Gretel, shaking her head. I'm not doing it. Well, there's something we can agree on, says Ruby. There's been some ground, says Will. I really don't give a about how groundbreaking the research is, Will, says Ruby. Will sits back down, presses his lips between his teeth, exudes disappointment. I know it can seem silly, says Will, but there's value in reaching beyond our comfort zones. I think a lot of us are already far outside our comfort zones, says Raina. Will picks a piece of phantom fuzz off his pants. Ashley, in an apparent effort to comfort Bernice, has taken the step off of Bernice's lap and is squatting on the floor, patting it like a good dog with one hand as she pulls the hem of her dress with the other. That hit heavy, that's why I read it. Okay, back to the story, and Gretel finally confronts Hansel about what happened to them as kids. Hansel thinks that all the bad things that happened to them were just figments of their imagination, whereas Gretel believes those things actually happened to them. And Hansel didn't see her side of things because he was living the life. He had his own room, he was getting to eat whatever he wanted, This nice lady was being good to him. He didn't see any of what Gretel was going through when she was being abused, she was being starved, all this stuff like that. Hansel was literally being groomed and fattened up so he could be eaten by a witch. Back to group, and the women finally have a breakthrough. They connect, through the societal expectations that are placed on them because they are women. They connect because they understand what it's like to be a woman in the public's eye. Long story short, Gretel never told Jade who she was or what happened to her, and they wound up breaking up. She just couldn't bring herself to trust anyone or open up to anyone, so she just let it be done. And that's the end of this chapter. To be honest, I really didn't like this one as much. I feel like we didn't get enough about what actually went down in the candy house, but that's my opinion. Alright, still week 4, and we're back in the office, and we're back on Will. He's still filming the women. He still has a crush on Raina, but then he also starts to hate her a little bit. That's it. Alright, it is week 5, and now it is Raina's turn. She is the last person to share her story in the group. Remember, with Raina, outside looking in, she's the calmest person in the group. And Raina begins her story with her father meeting Jake Jackson. Yes, the same Jake Jackson from Ashley's story, the host that was on The One. He's a TV personality. And their meeting is very similar to the beginning of Rumpelstiltskin, which that is the fairy tale that Raina is based off of. In this scenario, the poor farmer is Raina's dad, and the king is Jake Jackson. And the spinning to gold bit is replaced by she can literally edit anything. She has mad editing skills. But in Raina's story, rather than putting in a good word to Jake Jackson, he's quite literally pimping his daughter out. So Raina ends up getting a job on The One as an editor, and this was like when the show was brand new 20 years ago, and Raina was in her early 20s. 20 years ago. On her first day of work, she meets this little person and she calls him Little Man. Now, the book describes exactly what he looks like, but when I was reading it, I immediately envisioned Lickspittle from Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. This is who I see when we're talking about Little Man. Maybe that'll help you envision what he looks like too. So Raina introduces herself and she asks, what's your name? And of course, he won't tell her. If you remember how the original Tale of Rumpelstiltskin goes, then you know why. He offers to help her spruce up her editing skills because Raina knows little stuff, but she's not very good at editing. And in return, he wants nothing. He just wants to help her. So we flash back to the group, and this story is really taking an emotional toll on Raina. And this is the most upset we've seen her throughout this whole book, because she's usually, is put together and just... And she admits to the group that Little Man was very important to her. And the mention of Jake Jackson makes Ashley's ears perk up because, she worked with him on the one when she was on the show. And then that's when she recognizes Raina. Plot twist! Raina is married to Jake Jackson. Back to the story, back to Raina's story. Jake and Raina are becoming a little sweet on each other, okay? And Little Man is still helping her. She even became friends with Little Man. And the closer Raina gets to Jake, the more jealous Little Man becomes. And Raina learns the way that Jake is treating her, daunting on her, giving her compliments, giving her this beautiful ass rose gold office equipment. That is a routine that he does with every little young thing that he becomes infatuated with, and she ain't the first one. Now flash forward when in this time, Raina gets Pergananant. Jake gets her Pergananant, okay? And she tells Little Man, and she's like, you know what, I'm gonna keep it. And Little Man was pissed. Then this little menace gives her a whack ass ultimatum. It's either me or him. First, yes, you've been helping me and we're cool, we're friends, but what the f do you think this is? It's then that Raina finally is motivated to find out more about Little Man because, he doesn't have much about him known publicly. She doesn't know where he's from. He always just appears in her office. He never comes in through the front door. She doesn't even know his name. So she does some looking around and she comes upon this apartment building and she finds Little Man. And so she's spying on him through the window and he's singing along to some musical, and it occurs to her in that moment that, oh my gosh, he's singing his name. He's singing his own name. And we all know his name is Rumpelstiltskin, but the book itself, it redacts it. It's R dash. It looks like this. The book redacted his name. I'm like, yeah, okay. In the original tale of Rumpelstiltskin, at least the one that I grew up with, when the woman guessed his name, the earth opened him up and swallowed him whole, right? I'm going to read you the description of what happens when she says his name. I have to. I know this is my third time reading in this book, but I have to, girl. He hopped down, crouched on the floor looking at me. I will always remember him this way, dazzling in the monitor's golden light, sun-kissed and radiant, gleaming like an iridescent beetle. His skin was luminous, the hair on his arms took on an ethereal glow, his face flickered like a randomly faceted gem. Excuse me, I don't know why I couldn't get that out. Rumpelstiltskin, I said. I'm just gonna assume she said Rumpelstiltskin because it's redacted. His head cocked as if he had just heard a wrong note in a song. I can't, I said. His face seemed to change color, gold to red. I can still feel the heat rising off him. I wanted to touch him. What I would give now to reach out and touch him again. At first, inexplicably, I thought he was going to laugh. Even as his face contorted, bloomed scarlet, I thought the warmth radiating off him had something to do with the reflection of the monitor's light. Even as he flung his right knee into the air, I was sure he was going to smack his thigh and break out into laughter. And even as he didn't, even as he plunged his leg down instead, hard and fast, even as his heel hit the floor with such incredible force, even then I didn't realize he was angry. For a millisecond, the floor seemed simply to bend. Then it broke with a crack like thunder, floorboards splintering up from beneath the carpet. The heel, the ankle, the calf, the knee all crashed through. Now he was in a one-legged crouch, the other leg submerged in the fractured floor. He yanked at the stuck leg with both hands, but it wouldn't come loose. Only then did I realize he was angry. What he did next I cannot unremember. I cannot unsee. Time chugs forward, but my mind thrusts me back like a scratched record, back to this. I feel pulled always in two directions, stretched like taffy, one end forward, the other back. There are so many ways to be torn in half. His foot does not come loose. In a fit of wild inspiration, he grabs his left foot with his right hand and pulls, tearing himself in half like a piece of paper. Except that it's not like paper at all. At first, he looks like a costume unzipping itself from the bottom up. The noise is insane. Breaking bones, strange pops like cracking knuckles, a goop-sucking sound like boots in mud. I can't comprehend it even as it's happening. He's dividing, I think. Divide and conquer, I think. He's dividing like a cell. It's a kind of reproduction. Time is slow. The room is vivid with color. His face is a brilliant red. Neither of us screams. I want to take it all back. I want to unsay his name. I want to just know it, a secret between us. The way he knows my name, the way he is the only one who ever calls me by it, just sometimes in a whisper, a little cry. His brown eyes are wide open. Those eyes say that I have betrayed him. Those eyes say that I have betrayed him, that he pities me, that I am doing this to him, tearing him apart. They say all this. They just keep talking. They say, wrong choice. I feel like something inside of me is being ripped apart too. I feel it as a sting in my chest, as if I am being torn in half along with him. Red muscle, wrenched from red muscle, tattered edges, guilt surging like blood flowing out, evacuation from the wound. The skin on his neck pulls apart like string cheese right before his face splits in half. He looks at me squarely, and he seems to understand that I am hurting because he is hurting, because I have hurt him. It is awful how in this final moment, his strange final moment, he should think of me and offer this kindness, a smile that says, hey, it's okay, I'll be all right. But even as he smiles, the chin breaks in two with a bony snap, and then the mouth, the very smile begins to split, blood running up the center of each lip. They could just be dry, cracked winter lips, but now they are apart. They are two half mouths. They are still smiling, each of them like a canoe that's broken in two, stern and bow flicked up even while sinking, and the tear is rising. Rising up the bridge of his nose, a red line running through his forehead, marking the trail of unzipping. And the skin pulls apart like rubber, and the skull ruptures with a final crack, and there are two of him now, completely, and he is not a cell dividing, and there is nothing to conquer. It is only this. The self divided against itself. The stuck half hits the floor. The freed half manages a strange half turn, blood flinging across the room in glimmering strands, as if flying from the skirt of a twirling ballerina. Time is so slow that it seems will be frozen forever like this. The body hovering, the blood mid-fling, my mouth open. I think of one of those photographs taken at high speed where a bullet floats nonchalantly, a playing card or a piece of fruit is torn in its wake. It seems as if the body will never touch the ground, but it will. It does. The blood splatters and the body lands, one half rocking back and forth like a cradle before it settles into stillness, and then there is quiet and quiet and quiet. This is the end, I think. Maybe everything is over. Maybe time has stopped. Maybe nothing happens next. Maybe the entire plot has already occurred. What of any consequence could happen now? But of course, time always ticks forward, no matter the perceived rate. It can't be stopped. Next always happens. It's happening now. It's the only thing you can count on. Pretty accurate to the fairy tale. Flashback to group, and now it's their turn to tell Raina that she too was a victim in her situation. And Raina also has survivor's guilt because she truly did love little man, even if it was like a pet-like kind of love, she still loved him. I only say pet-like because that's how she treated him. Or if not pet-like, it's like the relationship you have with your babysitter. Like you love your babysitter loves you. That kind of weird thing. Back to the story. Jake and his assistant come into the room. They're like, what is going on in here? Turns out the assistant, or whoever he is, he recognizes little man even as his body has been split in two. Apparently he was like a big guy in the industry, you know, because of his editing skills, but he got blackballed due to his temper. So Jake's publicist spun the story somehow, some way, making Jake the hero and Raina the damsel in distress, and they went on to live a happily ever after, right? So the next part, and the last part of Raina's story is crazy. I'm not gonna read it. I'm gonna let my past self explain to you what happened, because I recorded my reaction plenty of times reading this book because this book had me on my toes. But Tahlia from September, take it away. But then the twist comes at the end. This is where they made a dark fairy tale darker. So She goes, wait, the story's not done. I have to tell y'all this or else the rest of the story is just as good as a lie. She reveals to the group and to us that she f***ed Rumpelstiltskin. So the baby wasn't the man that she was in love with. It was his baby. She reveals that the daughter that she had, the baby that she had, it wasn't her husband's. It was little man. So I was thinking, okay, this can't get any darker because like the original fairy tale is already dark enough as it is. Add sleeping with the villain who played mind games with you and manipulated you. Whole time it wasn't that man's baby. And this is like towards the end of the book. I'm on page like 270 right now. The book is only 286 pages. So how are they going to close this up with this when they just told me what they told me? How am I supposed to be okay and move on from this after reading that? Are you still with me? All right, last chapter. To be honest, very rushed in my opinion. It was only like, what, 4 pages long? Maybe that? So, Will takes off his skin suit and he reveals his true identity to the group. Guess what? Will is f***ing Jake Jackson, aka Raina's husband. He has been Will this whole time. And the women figure out that they have been filmed this entire time and that he plans to release to the public as a new show. And of course, they're pissed, because who would it be? And Jake / Will, whoever he is trying to pull some shit, talking about some, you don't get it. I'm doing you a favor. This is gonna help women everywhere. Sir, you were recording us without our consent and you us over. You made us relive our trauma, and for what? Some ratings? Get the I quit. The women aren't buying it and they shouldn't, and then that's the end. But there's an epilogue narrated by Bernice. We kind of get an update on her life, how things are going with the furniture. She still has the furniture. She never got rid of the furniture, but she's getting some more sleep now. And the book alludes to there being public knowledge of this, you know, alleged show with all these women that we are familiar with because of their traumatic pasts, but the actual footage has not been seen by anyone yet. But there's like a rumor floating around, you know, allegations floating around and stuff. Bernice sued Bluebeard's estate, so she's gonna get that money on, and then she's also gonna plan to sue Will along with all the other women, but they fear that they're not gonna win. That's what I read implied from that. But then that's the end. That is the end of the story. That was How to Be Eaten by Maria. Is it Maria? Yeah, Maria Adelmann. This book was so good. This is now one of my favorites now. This is like top 5 now for sure. Now, like I do always, I'm going to speak on some commentary that I pulled from this book. Now, I want to preface this next part by saying this. A lot of the commentary that I gave y'all and talked about in the Final Girl support video, go watch it please. It's very similar because the premises and the plot, it's very similar. I have a lot of the same commentary to share because the structure of each book has so many similarities. But here is where I will draw the difference line, okay? The Final Girl support group, I know I said I wasn't going to compare and contrast, but here I am. I don't care. They're so similar. That's why I'm comparing. The Final Girl support group was written by a man, Grady Hendrix. Shout out to you. Did a good job. I said in that video that, you know, this is a book about feminism, and it is, but when a man attempts to write feminist material, it almost always falls flat because they either try too hard or they don't try enough. Because parts in the book about what it's like to be a woman in We Are Women, I Am Woman, I am fearless, I am sexy, I am divine, it was too preachy, it was too on the nose. I'm like, this is how you know a man wrote it. Here, in How to Be Eaten, Maria, being a woman or female presenting, she pulled out all of the emotion, all of the thought process of what it's like to be a woman in today's society without directly preaching to the choir. This is what it is to write feminist material. You don't have to explain it to anyone. You shouldn't have to explain it like breaking the fourth wall and talking directly to the audience. No, the way that the dialogue is written, and it's where we see it is when the women are talking to each other about what they went through, and they connect the dots and like, hey, maybe we are the same. We've gone through a lot of the same things, many of which were caused by men who did us wrong. And it's just so beautiful for when they finally have that scene in this book and they realize that, hey, we are a sisterhood. We need to stick together because we've been through some really bad shit because of men, and how we have been perceived for half of our lives because we are women. Hey, we're in this together. That was beautifully written. Beautifully written. Thank you so much, Maria. I want to get on the topic of victim blaming because it happened quite a bit in this book. We see this mostly happening with women and between women because one of the things, prime example, so when Ruby was attacked and pursued by the wolf, she was a 12-year-old girl wearing a very short corduroy skirt, okay? And a lot of the people in the tabloids are like, well, a 12-year-old girl shouldn't be wearing skirts that short anyway, so she provoked him. Well, prime example. And I'm like, what the hell? There was also a little bit of victim blaming going on with Bernice because they were like, your sister told you how he was with women and you still, wanted to be around him, and then you had red flags, but you still wanted to be. Look, when the victim, or I should say survivor, when they're in that abusive, toxic mental space and physical space, of course it's not gonna click, and that's the problem. Like, people don't understand what it's like until that's them in that situation. And you think they would. You think the whole group would understand Bernice, would understand Ruby, because they have been in similar situations, but they still had that internalized misogyny or patriarchal standards within them to victim blame automatically. And this was also a good example of what not to do. If a victim or survivor is sharing their story, don't point the finger at them. Do not point the finger at them. That's what you don't do. You need to show support and give them support that they need. Give them the strength that they need so they can tell their story, speak their truth with confidence. Maria, amazing. And then there's the stuff about the patriarchy. I'm not gonna spend too much time on that because y'all know I hate the patriarchy in men because, and I said that at the beginning of the video. In a group full of women, in an emotional support group for women who have been through traumatic things in the public eye, why would a man be there? And there are multiple instances within this book where Will was instigating some shit. I'm getting angry and passionate, but let me slow down. Will was purposely instigating between the women so that they would argue. He was literally turning them against each other. Thankfully it didn't work, but like I said, why would a man be there? A woman would never. A woman would never, especially if she understood. A woman would never. And I would never have a man leading an all-women group therapy session anyway. There's standards that men benefit from that women do not. So, sitting in a circle while all these women share what these men did to them or male species did to them, and a man is like, and how did that make you feel? That is the most condescending shit ever.
Hey, just wanted to chime in right here real quick because this didn't really cross my mind when I was filming. So as you've noticed, I said most of these women were done wrong by men. And when I say that, I'm talking about Gretel specifically, not excluding her, but, acknowledging that the person who harmed her was a woman because, they were kidnapped by a witch and they said it was a woman. But I do also want to point out that she was wrong by a man too. her own brother, you know, him just completely disregarding what she went through because his experience was different. I did want to add that. And this also goes to show that not only men are predators, women can be predators too. And that needs to be talked about when people don't talk about it enough. But yes, that's what I wanted to say. Back to the video.
But yeah, that's my little tidbit on the commentary here. Oh, I also want to say this. The commentary, it's not really commentary, but I want to talk about the element of fairy tales. I want to let this be known right here, and I said this like way back when I read it. Maria Adelmann is so talented because you want to know why? She took the original fairy tales that were already dark upon their creation and release. She made them darker. How does one do that? Now, we all know that the real Cinderella is very dark. We all know that the real Sleeping Beauty is very dark. We all know that the real fairy tale of Bluebeard is very dark. And we all know that the Hans Christian Andersen and Grimm's Brothers fairy tales are very dark. We been knew that, right? How do you, first, she was able to modernize them, right? Without it being overkill. And she made these already dark fairy tales that are meant for children, by the way. She made these already dark fairy tales darker. It was because of the modernization, it made it even darker than what, girl. And it also goes to show that even, it don't matter if this was a fairy tale back in the 1500s or modern retelling of the fairy tales in today's time. What's the common thread that we all saw through that? Men ain't shit. Joking. But no, it's just the fact that, you know, these women have been put in harm's way, and it's always a woman being put in harm's way. And that is commentary on its own. The safety of women and the protection of women is something that is a common thread with these OG fairy tales that originated in like the 17th, maybe 16th century, and the modern retelling of those same stories. And change, and that's sad. But yeah, I wanted to touch on that before we went to my favorite part of the video. Okay, done with the commentary. Now, it is time for my favorite part of reading Rouge, and that is the dream cast. Now, I always say, if the book is good, I can see it playing out in my head like a movie. This, if it hasn't already been adapted, someone get to work. I'll even help, put me in the damn writer's room, but I want to be the casting director. Let me cast it. I have zero experience, but let me do it, please. For Bernice, she is described to be a young 20-something and a plus-size girly. I would put up Dara Renee. Now listen, I know she's one of these new gen actors, and the only thing I've seen her in is High School Musical, the series. I've seen enough. I think she's only been in Disney stuff. I looked her up a little bit, did a little bit of research. She's only been in Disney stuff. She's the right age, she's beautiful, and she's got our plus size girly representation going on. So I would put up Dara for Bernice, okay? Moving on to Ruby. Now this is like our messy, sloppy type B, I don't give a shit what no one thinks, you know, type of girl who makes everybody mad. I will put up Emma Kinney, strictly because of her portrayal of her character Debbie in Shameless in the later seasons. She pissed me off so bad. I feel like she's so good at playing characters that piss people off. This would be perfect. So, and she's already a redhead too. So, Emma Kinney for Ruby. Now for Ashley, I had a hard time picking this one because I'm like, there's so many actresses that kind of fill this typecast, but I had to think, I had to be original. I'm like, I can't really use people that we already know who's gonna body this role. How about someone else? So I chose Emily Allen Lind, this lady right here. She's the right age. Ashley is 22 in this book, and she's young enough to play 22. She's 20 what? How old is she? 25? 21? She one of them, but she's young enough. I really liked her performance in Dr. Sleep, so I want to see her take on this role, being that prissy, snobby, like vocal fry type of person. I think she can do it. Now for Raina, I had a hard time picking Reina. I wanted there to be some diversity because really, there wasn't really any descriptors saying that, well, these women were white to begin with. I mean, there are some descriptors for some, but not all of them. I'm like, I want to diversify it a little bit. Why not? Like, why can't we diversify it a little bit? I'm gonna do it. So for Reina, I think Sherry Som, from one of my favorite shows ever, from The Fosters. Oh, she would body this role as Reina, that calm, composed, regal, maternal type of woman. She can do it. She can do it. I know she can do it. And for young Reina, I would say Cara Royster. Did I say her name right, darling? I'm sorry. Now, granted, she's not that much younger than Sherry, but she looks younger, and that's no shade. And she's the only actress that I think that has similar facial features to Sherry, especially her nose and her smile. But yeah, Cara, get in here and play young Reina. For Gretel, this was like my first pick for the dream cast. I immediately envisioned her. I don't know why. Toni Collette, please, that is it. Toni Collette for Gretel, and I'm moving on. And last, and certainly least, we have Will/Jake. I think Matt Zurchie, is it Zurchie? The guy that played Dex on American Horror Story Delicate, he can give it. He can give that creepy incel stalkerish asshole. He can do it. Put him in a role. And yeah, that's my dream cast. Yeah. Now I will admit, my dream cast for the last 4 Reading Rouges have not been great. And I can admit that. I can admit when I'm wrong. But this one, I feel like I got my groove back. I think what I'm going to start doing from now on, I'm going to expand my horizons more and start casting people in their prime. For example, I'm going to start, let's say for one of these characters, I'll cast Tatiana Ali, but from the 90s. I'm going to start doing that. But yeah, that was my dream cast. And that is it. That's the end. That was How to Be Eaten by Maria Adelmann. And then here's my look. I tried to do yellow orange ombre, didn't work. Sorry about it. I'm not a professional. But yeah, so that concludes our video for today. If you enjoyed today's video, please leave a like. If you made it to the end of this video, comment a piece of candy and subscribe if you want to. I'll see y'all on the next go round. Okay, bye.